Gunfire cracks through the cold air. The battle many feared and many warned about is now a reality. On the contested plains of Poland, explosions rock the ground as NATO forces push forward, carving through the smoke, fire, and chaos. Their mission is to stop Russia once and for all. But this isn't just Russia. It's Russia and China, two of the world's most powerful military forces standing together. Who will emerge victorious? Find out on today's episode of The Infographic Show. USA and NATO versus Russia and China. Who would win 2025 edition? Let's start with how we even got here. Well, the world's been on edge for years, so the real wonder is how we didn't get here sooner. From Taiwan to Eastern Europe, from resource struggles in Africa to rising military posturing worldwide. Flashpoints are everywhere. Superpowers clash, old alliances strain, new partnerships emerge. The balance of power is shifting and the world is a powder keg waiting for a spark. And that spark comes from none other than Russia. The country has lost over 850,000 troops in Ukraine in roughly 3 years. Its president, Vladimir Putin, is cornered and desperate. He is not only losing soldiers, he is losing the war. He is losing the support of the Kremlin elite that expected him to deliver Kyiv on a silver platter in a few days. Putin is like a wounded animal. But one thing about wounded animals, they tend to lash out, especially when they're not alone. So Putin pushes the red button. He launches massive air and missile strikes against NATO bases in Eastern Europe. In just one instance, Russia launched 43 ballistic and cruise missiles and 74 drones overnight, targeting everything from energy grids to military infrastructure. Dozens of Russian missiles are heading toward Poland. In the east, NATO stands ready. 8 multinational battle groups are stationed across 8 countries. And those aren't just symbolic forces. Each one is combat ready, positioned in high-risk zones stretching from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. But the most formidable force of all? Poland. There, a US-led battle group reinforced by troops from the United Kingdom and Romania holds the line. This battle group alone is a powerful force of 11,600 troops, ready for whatever comes next. But Poland isn't the only target. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, NATO's defensive front in the northeast, are all in the firing line. In Estonia, the UK leads a battle group with roughly 900 troops, with France contributing heavy armor and infantry. In Lithuania, Germany commands another battle group, which is reinforced by troops from Belgium, Norway, and the Netherlands, totaling 1,800 personnel. These battle groups provide a formidable defense but also a massive target for Russia. And then there's Finland, NATO's newest member, a country that shares an 830-mile border with Russia. But Finland isn't just another NATO country, it's a military powerhouse for its size. With a population of 5.5 million, Finland is no military lightweight. Nearly 950,000 citizens, 17% of the country, have military training. Its wartime strength, 280,000 troops, one of the largest in NATO, backed by an additional 870,000 reserves. Per capita, its fighter ratio rivals ancient Sparta. Finland's defense spending has skyrocketed, reaching 2.3% of GDP in 2024, well above NATO's 2% benchmark. Already taking the lead, Finland has commanded 150 aircraft and 3,000 personnel in the Arctic Challenge in 2023 and hosted 20,000 troops in NATO's largest drills in decades. For Russia, this isn't just another neighbor, it's a fortress at its border, and it is exactly why Finland is now in Moscow's crosshairs. However, this isn't exactly a surprise. The same goes for missiles now heading toward Poland, Finland, and other NATO countries. Russia has been positioning 9 K-720 Iskander systems in Kaliningrad, Russia's heavily militarized enclave between Poland and Lithuania, since 2016. This allowed Moscow to put much of Eastern Europe well within range. Iskander short-range ballistic missiles can travel up to 310 miles. Each one is 24 feet long, nearly the size of a shuttle bus, and it weighs up to almost 8,900 pounds at launch. Their warheads weigh between 1,000 and 1,500 pounds, capable of carrying high-explosive thermobaric or earth-penetrating payloads. But the Iskanders are not alone. Russia also deploys Kh-47M2 Kinzhals, an air-launched ballistic missile with a reported range of up to 1,200 miles. Launched from modified MiG-31 fighters, the Kinzhal carries a 1,000-pound warhead, either conventional or nuclear. It reaches speeds of up to Mach 10, making interception extremely difficult. The missile's high maneuverability and unpredictable flight path add to the challenge. The Kinzhal was first used in combat against Ukraine in 2022, with Russia touting it as a game-changing weapon. But despite its blistering speed, Ukrainian forces, using US-supplied Patriot missile systems, successfully intercepted Kinzhals in 2023, proving that even Russia's most advanced missiles are not unstoppable. But this time, they hit, and it's all thanks to China's cyber warfare capabilities. Sophisticated cyber attacks led by the China-backed Volt Typhoon Group cripple command systems and sever satellite communications. They cause a temporary loss of radar coverage, disrupt GPS signals crucial for missile defense, and interfere with the transmission of targeting data. As a result, they briefly throw NATO into chaos. It's brief, but it's enough time for the missiles to find their mark. And then all hell breaks loose. Russia and China's main goal is to seize large swaths of Eastern Europe before NATO can properly react. But NATO isn't alone. The US president won't stand by as Russia and China attempt to redraw Europe's borders. While pushing European allies to share the financial burden, he knows one thing is for certain. The US military remains NATO's ultimate deterrent. He deploys forward bases in Poland and Romania and sends an additional 60,000 troops to Europe. But the US isn't acting alone. Other NATO powers, including the UK, France, and Germany, are also mobilizing, reinforcing Eastern Europe with troops and heavy equipment. Because in NATO, an attack on one is an attack on all. Thanks to the Blitzkrieg attack, the Sino-Russian alliance makes some territorial gains in Eastern Europe with airborne and mechanized forces. But not even a week passes before the US and NATO unleash their full aerial might, and so the war above Europe begins. To sustain its pressure in Europe, Russia has already deployed waves of MiG-29s and Su-27s. However, the real threat comes from the country's advanced Su-57 stealth fighters. Designed to counter NATO's superior air defenses, the Su-57 features a stealthy design, internal weapons bays, and advanced avionics like AESA radar and infrared search and track systems. The Su-57 is built for agility, capable of high-speed interception and extreme maneuverability, including performing 120-degree turns and hovering at high altitudes. This makes it quite a formidable competitor in the skies. But there is one glaring issue. Russia has less than 30 of these jets, and NATO is readying a storm in the skies. The F-35s, the very jets these Russian stealth fighters are designed to counter, are coming, and they're coming in the hundreds. NATO already has a large fleet of F-35s, and that number is expected to reach around 500 F-35s across its fleets by 2030, all backed by a massive support network. And these aren't just jets, they are the very definition of air superiority. With a top speed of Mach 1.6, they'll slice through the skies at 1,200 miles per hour, outpacing anything the Russians can throw at them. Their combat radius is 1,350 miles, a range that gives them the ability to dominate from Poland to the heart of Belarus without ever needing to refuel. And that is just the start. These F-35s are armed with the most sophisticated weaponry and tech in the world. This includes the Electro-Optical Distributed Aperture System, which feeds the pilots with a 360-degree situational awareness. And when it comes to stealth, let's just say you won't even see them coming. The F-35's low observable design is a nightmare for radar, while the helmet-mounted display system puts all the intel in the pilot's visor, targeting data, threat detection, and even missile warnings. This is precision warfare at its finest. These jets prove critical in early engagements. Simultaneously, NATO deploys around 150 Eurofighter Typhoons and 150 Fa-18 Hornets to conduct high-speed intercepts and counter-air operations. These platforms, though not as stealthy as their American counterparts, excel in multi-role missions, including aerial refueling. They work closely with NATO's integrated air defense systems to fill gaps in coverage. With NATO's aircraft holding their own in the skies, long-range bombers like the B-21 Raider and B-52 Stratofortress are dispatched to conduct deep strikes against Russian supply depots and logistics hubs. The B-21, with its stealth capabilities, provides a new level of precision targeting, allowing NATO to strike Russian assets deep behind enemy lines without fear of being detected by radar. Each B-21 is a flying fortress, equipped to deliver both nuclear and conventional munitions with surgical accuracy. It boasts an average price tag of $692 million per aircraft, and every cent is on display as it silently slips into the most fortified airspace. Designed to operate in the deadliest environments, this bomber is a game-changer. However, it's also limited in number as a relatively new development, so only a dozen or so B-21s are deployed for strategic strikes, but they're more than enough to wreak havoc. But where is China in all of this? Well, China has decided to go beast mode. You might have heard this term used by the US military when talking about fighters like the F-22 or the F-35 carrying external weapons. Well, now China's J-20 stealth fighter is joining the club. This means that the J-20 is flying with external air-to-air missiles, packing even more heat. This includes 8 PL-15 missiles on its 4 underwing pylons. These are medium to long-range air-to-air missiles capable of hitting targets up to 124 miles away. Now that is range and firepower you don't want to mess with. So before you know it, the skies above Poland and the Baltics soon become a deadly dance of speed, maneuver, and technology. In a pivotal confrontation over the skies of Belarus, the J-20 stealth fighters face off with NATO's F-22 Raptors. The J-20s, despite their cutting-edge design, are forced to contend with the superior radar and combat capabilities of the F-22s. This engagement, which proves to be one of the fiercest aerial battles of the early conflict, results in at least 8 downed J-20s. But the sheer number of Chinese aircraft continue to pressure NATO forces. In total, China operates around 200 of these advanced stealth fighters, and NATO will possibly face off against half of them. However, by the end of the first month of warfare, NATO's sustained air operations and technological superiority begin to turn the tide. After all, NATO still maintains a clear edge in terms of both numbers and the overall performance of its aircraft. The combined capabilities of these jets, along with unmatched intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, or ISR systems, ensure that NATO's fighters can maintain control of the skies. There's no air superiority for Russia and China, just dozens upon dozens of downed jets. But the war is far from over. Even worse, it's about to gain a new front. But first, have you found it odd that China has supported Russia so fiercely in this hypothetical scenario? Well, that's because there was always something more behind it. This whole war was a calculated move that would allow China to gain what it had always wanted: Taiwan. Now, China's invasion of Taiwan was always described as difficult. There's the terrain, Taiwan's rugged landscapes, with steep mountains and narrow beaches, making a traditional amphibious assault incredibly difficult. Taiwan also has heavily invested in its military defenses. The 2025 budget alone is $20.25 billion, 2.45% of Taiwan's gross domestic product. That's more than the country's expected GDP growth. But the biggest obstacle to a Chinese invasion is Taiwan's allies. The US in particular has long been Taiwan's primary defense partner, and any attempt to invade would likely trigger a US-led response. But if the country was preoccupied with, say, a war halfway across the world, well, that leaves Taiwan wide open. Of course, the reveal of China's master plan probably isn't a surprise. After all, China has only ever seen Russia as a means to an end, not a true partner. So while Russia fights to hold its own ground in Europe, China escalates the conflict in the Pacific. It launches a naval assault on Taiwan and the US Navy. The Russian Navy is there too, as this was the only way to secure China's help in Europe. The Sino-Russian fleet, unified in its goal, brings together China's massive warships and Russia's formidable submarines in the South China Sea. The goal is clear: challenge the US Navy's dominance and seize control of Taiwan. The offensive starts with a bang, literally. Hundreds of ballistic and cruise missiles rain down on Taiwan's military installations, while swarms of attack drones target radar sites and air defense batteries. Meanwhile, Chinese warships deploy in full force. And remember, China's fleet is massive, the biggest in the world. It has 234 warships in active service compared to the US Navy's 219. But China's real strength isn't just in numbers. Its ships are newer too. Around 70% of China's warships have been launched after 2010, making the country's fleet more modern and increasingly on par with the US Navy. That's a big advantage, especially considering the US's fleet's average age is rising, with only about 25% of the ships launched after 2010. China's maritime strength isn't limited to big ships either. It has been rapidly expanding its fleet of smaller but vital surface combatants like frigates and corvettes. These ships make up in numbers what they lack in size. They're more numerous and better suited for combat in the Indo-Pacific's complex littoral waters. The US Navy still dominates when it comes to the large multi-mission destroyers and cruisers, but China's rapidly expanding fleet of smaller vessels gives it a key advantage: the ability to sustain pressure and absorb losses. In a prolonged war, that is a luxury NATO and the US simply cannot afford. In this naval showdown, China can take hits and keep coming, something proven in war games where it took heavy losses but still maintained a fleet capable of fighting on. For the US, its biggest advantage remains its submarine fleet. The US Navy operates 49 fast-attack submarines, with 25 stationed in the Pacific, forming a critical line of deterrence in the region. These nuclear-powered submarines are built for stealth, endurance, and devastating firepower. Armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles, they can strike up to 1,000 miles away, and with up to 25 Mark 48 heavyweight torpedoes, they are just as lethal in underwater combat. making them a formidable force in both offensive and defensive operations. Beyond attack submarines, the U.S. Pacific Fleet also includes 2 guided missile submarines and 8 Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines. The SSBNs, often referred to as boomers, play a critical role in strategic deterrence, with all of them combined capable of carrying more nuclear warheads than China's entire nuclear arsenal. These submarines provide the U.S. with a second strike capability, ensuring continued deterrence against potential adversaries. Unlike conventional-powered submarines, U.S. nuclear-powered vessels have essentially unlimited range, limited only by food supplies and crew endurance. This allows them to operate undetected in international waters for extended periods, something that China's growing but still conventionally limited submarine fleet cannot do. And remember, the U.S. isn't alone in the Indo-Pacific. It might not have NATO, but it does have Australia, Japan, and even South Korea. And Taiwan can hold its own pretty well. All these allies have made major moves to strengthen their naval power, especially under the surface. So the U.S. quickly coordinates, and it sends for the carriers. At the heart of the Indo-Pacific, the USS George Washington scrambles to deploy. Moored in Yokosuka, the crew races against time, rushing supplies and aircraft back on board. Within hours, the carrier is cutting through the waves, escorted by a lethal screen of 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and a Ticonderoga-class cruiser. The strike group moves fast. Taiwan's defenses depend on it. Already at sea, the USS Carl Vinson is ready for war. Fresh off the exercise Pacific Stellar 2025, its carrier Air Wing 2 is fully operational. 10 FA-18 Super Hornets, 5 EA-18G Growlers, and 3 E-2D Hawkeyes launch in rapid succession, shifting from drills to combat in an instant. French and Japanese warships, alongside Vincent's own escorts, turn their guns eastward, toward the fight. China has carriers too, 3 of them, but only one, the Fujian Type 003, is truly a contender. The Liaoning Type 001 and Shandong Type 002 have been at sea together, parading China's growing ambitions, but they're still limited. Both rely on ski jump ramps for takeoff, restricting payloads and aircraft types. The Fujian, on the other hand, is a different beast. At 85,000 tons, it's closer to a U.S. supercarrier in size and boasts electromagnetic catapults, or EMALs, a first for China. But there's a catch: the carrier is still in sea trials, and it hasn't launched aircraft at sea yet. In other words, the U.S. remains in a league of its own, and its carriers demonstrate this live. From the north, George Washington punches forward, launching airstrikes and securing air superiority over the East China Sea. From the south, Carl Vinson and its allies carve through Chinese naval formations in the South China Sea. French Rafales and Japanese F-35s join the assault, the skies a blur of missiles and jet trails. Meanwhile, beneath the surface, a silent predator, Virginia-class submarines stalk enemy warships. The USS Minnesota, a billion-dollar naval marvel, was sent to Guam in late November 2024 precisely for this region. One by one, Russian and Chinese vessels vanish in columns of water and flame. The Virginia-class kill machine is making good use of its 12 Tomahawk missiles, 26 Mark 48 torpedoes, and 10 naval mines. The battle is brutal, the cost heavy, but the Allies hold the line. China stumbles. The invasion of Taiwan is no longer a sure thing. The same can be said for the invasion of Eastern Europe. The skies have burned, the seas have boiled, and now the battle has reached the most brutal phase: land combat. Eastern Europe erupts into the largest land war of the 21st century. The roads clog with tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and artillery rolling toward the front. The Russian T-90M tanks and BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles, or IFVs, take the charge. After all, Russia was supposedly the undisputed king of armored warfare. Well, you see, was is the key word here. Sure, Russia's armored vehicles are powerful. The T-90M is Russia's most advanced main battle tank, fitted with a deadly 125mm smoothbore gun, capable of firing anti-tank guided missiles. It has relict explosive reactive armor, designed to withstand modern threats, and a thermal imaging system that gives it a serious edge in targeting. On paper, the tank is built to dominate. But a war isn't fought on paper. In reality, Russia simply doesn't have enough of these tanks. The war in Ukraine has bled Russia's armored forces dry. At least 125 T-90Ms have been lost, some blown apart by javelins, others abandoned in the chaos of retreat. The Kremlin is scrambling to replace them, churning out 60 to 70 new tanks a year, with hopes of pushing past 90 annually in 2025. Plus, the tanks delivered in early 2025 are supposedly different combat vehicles from those used in early 2022. They reportedly feature 100 new upgrades, including anti-first-person view drone nets and reinforced rubber protection. But these 100 new upgrades mean nothing when Russia can't even scrounge up that many tanks, and the war isn't waiting for these tanks or the BMP-3 vehicles. Once a symbol of Moscow's ability to field fast amphibious and heavily armed troop carriers, the BMP-3 was designed for modern mechanized warfare. Its 100mm main gun paired with a 30mm autocannon made it a formidable weapon system, agile, versatile, and capable of engaging both ground and air targets. This was supposed to be the backbone of Russian mechanized infantry, but that backbone is now shattered. Before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, there were around 760 BMP-3s in active service. But after 3 years of war, that number has plummeted. Oryx confirms that at least 424 were lost, with hundreds of additional variants damaged or abandoned. These losses are simply staggering, so the Russian defense industry is struggling to keep up. Production delays and inconsistent output mean the Kremlin simply can't replenish these vehicles fast enough. While new batches of BMP-3s are being delivered, it's too little too late. NATO and the US, on the other hand, have no issue with their mechanized forces. So they're about to face off with Russia and China with hundreds of main battle tanks and thousands of infantry fighting vehicles. There's the M1 Abrams, a tank that packs almost 5,000 strong, featuring its legendary 120mm smoothbore gun, advanced armor, and cutting-edge tech like the SEP V3 upgrade. It's a proven beast on the battlefield. And then there's the Leopard 2, NATO's star, with more than 3,000 of those beasts deployed. The Leopard 2A6 and A7 versions, armed with that same powerful 120mm smoothbore, dominate open and urban terrain with speed and precision. Oh, of course, let's not forget the Bradley IFV. This one brings 25mm autocannon firepower and TOW anti-tank missiles, making it a lethal support vehicle for infantry squads. And the Chinese, they too have numbers, but the sheer technological sophistication and logistical readiness of NATO and the US make this fight a battle of attrition Russia and China can't win. Not without more time, more tanks, and better recovery. So the ground battle quickly devolves into chaos. Abrams and Leopards use their superior sensors to fire on the move, picking off targets at range. Day after day, the European fields are littered with steel carcasses and smoking craters. As the tank battle rages, the sky starts raining fire too. Artillery has joined the game. Within the first 72 hours, over 100,000 shells get fired. In the coming weeks, entire villages are reduced to rubble, and tens of thousands of soldiers are dead. Both sides suffer heavy losses, but one side truly can't take the hit. China may top the charts with over 2 million active duty troops, making it the world's largest standing army. But numbers alone don't win wars. The US-NATO alliance brings something far more critical: combat experience, cutting-edge technology, and battle-hardened forces. While Russia and China commit 300,000 soldiers to each, their armies simply can't match NATO's level of readiness and firepower. At least not yet. The Russians are barely holding on as it is, and a new senseless war in Eastern Europe would push them to the brink. The loss of so many soldiers in Ukraine has left them with a hollowed-out force. Putin might try to supplement his ranks with allies, but we've all seen how North Koreans performed in Ukraine. This is another example of quality trumping quantity. North Korea has almost the same number of soldiers as the US, 1.32 million, and yet one US soldier is worth far more than an entire battalion of poorly equipped, undertrained North Korean forces. So the land battle in Europe is brutal, mainly for the Sino-Russian alliance. The daily fatalities far surpass those in Ukraine, where the casualty toll averaged 1,500 in late 2024. Simply put, it's carnage out there. The US Armored Division smashed through the Russian lines in Eastern Europe, breaking their supply network. Polish mechanized forces retake key cities, eliminating 25,000 Russian troops in just days. French and German forces push toward Belarus. The Russian front begins to collapse. And this leads us to the big question: will the conflict turn nuclear? After all, whenever the possibility of World War III is discussed, many people claim it would be a short one, a quick, catastrophic event where nations turn to their most devastating weapons right away, or at least Russia would. Talk is one thing, actually pressing the button is another. If that button were to be pressed, the outcome is obvious. Russia commands nearly 4,000 nuclear warheads, including 1,500 deployed strategic warheads and up to 2,000 non-strategic warheads that fall outside of treaty limits. Its ally, China, is rapidly expanding its arsenal but still lags behind, with 600 warheads today and projections reaching 1,000 by 2030. Meanwhile, the US fields 3,700 warheads, with 1,400 deployed and another 100 tactical bombs stationed in Europe. Adding to NATO's nuclear umbrella, France contributes 290 warheads, while the UK holds 225, relying entirely on a submarine-based deterrent. Altogether, the US and its allies don't just have the numbers, they have the edge where it truly matters. With superior delivery systems, hardened second strike capabilities, and a vast global missile defense network, NATO holds a decisive strategic advantage. If nuclear war were to break out, it would make any rational military strategy meaningless for Russia or China. And let's be honest, it wouldn't just reshape the balance of power, it would be the end of the world as we know it. So let's not end it just yet. Let's say Putin only threatens nuclear escalation. Chances are China would also try to prevent Russia from launching nukes. After all, the country is in it for its own interests, not to trigger a global catastrophe. So NATO's nuclear forces remain on high alert, but the alliance doesn't initiate a strike. Instead, it capitalizes on Russia's weakening position. With Moscow unable to use its nuclear arsenal without guaranteeing its own destruction, NATO launches a massive counteroffensive in Europe with hundreds of thousands of troops. German and Polish tank divisions backed by US air power began reclaiming lost ground in the Baltics. Strategic airstrikes cripple Russian supply lines, hitting fuel depots, rail networks, and ammunition stockpiles. Russian forces already struggling with shortages start to falter. China tries to keep Russia supplied, but Western cyber attacks and naval blockades severely disrupt the flow of weapons and equipment. This is a war of attrition, but one that favors NATO and the US. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, the US and its allies tighten their grip. Australian and American submarines decimate the Chinese Navy, sinking over 30 warships and at least 30 supporting vessels. With its naval power dwindling, China loses control over the Taiwan Strait. U.S. Space Command launches a devastating cyber and satellite warfare campaign, blinding Beijing's forces and cutting off key communications channels. Taiwan's military, supported by U.S. Marines, begins retaking lost ground, as India, the world's second-largest military force with 1.4 million active personnel, mobilizes troops along its border. Beijing is forced to divert resources, stretching its forces thin. By the sixth month of the war, Russia's front is all but collapsed. Over 200,000 Russian and Chinese soldiers are dead, but NATO isn't stopping. Its forces push deeper into Russian-held territory, and internal unrest spreads across Russia. China, facing economic collapse and an unwinnable war in Taiwan, reaches a crossroads. The invasion has failed, and Western sanctions are strangling its economy, slashing its GDP by 15%. Japan and India prepare for further action, ensuring China has no easy way out. As the war grinds on, Beijing must decide, does it double down or does it seek an exit before it shares Russia's fate? Let's face it, China's heart was never really in the war. With Taiwan lost, the Chinese Communist Party, once confident in its ability to challenge the US, is now looking for a way out. Interestingly, the US might just be the one to provide this way out. China secretly reaches out to Washington through diplomatic backchannels, using intermediaries in neutral countries to gauge the US position on a potential ceasefire. For Beijing, the writing is on the wall. Its navy's in shambles, its economy is crumbling under the weight of severe Western sanctions, and its access to vital energy and raw materials is under threat. A prolonged war would only deepen the crisis, pushing China toward internal instability, something the Communist Party fears more than any external enemy. As things stand, there is no question, NATO and the US emerge victorious. While the combined strength of NATO was decisive, the US's overwhelming military power was a crucial factor in the victory. After all, the country's 2025 defense budget is at least $850 billion. That is more than Russia, China, and the entire NATO spend combined. In the end, Russia's military is shattered, its economy is in ruins, and its government is on the verge of collapse. China, once seen as America's biggest challenger, now struggles to recover from a war that drained its resources and shattered its ambitions. But the cost? Unimaginable. Millions of lives lost, trillions of dollars spent, a world forever changed. If a full-scale war broke out between NATO and the US versus Russia and China, who would you think would come out on top? Would advanced technology and alliances win the day, or would sheer numbers and strategy turn the tide? Now go check out US plan if China takes Taiwan, or click on this video instead.